We are going to get going today. We're going to talk about just a complete overview in terms of selling your online program for your personal brand. So if you're selling a program or you're thinking about selling a program, this is the complete overview of how to do it. I'm going to kind of walk you through the process of what I did, and then I'm going to tell you in terms of how to actually just trim it down, because when you look at success in general, what happens is you want it to be a straight line from A to Z, right? But what happens is it's just all over the place. Like you're just literally going all over the place, and then finally you end up in the successful part that you wish you were in to begin with, right? And so I'm going to show you this in terms of where I was a little bit. Then I'm going to show you that. So I'm going to show you the complete overview of how to sell your online programs for your personal brand. So let's see who's hopping on real quick. And let's get into it. So, hopefully you guys, if you're going to sell an online program or you're thinking about selling an online program, you're selling your expertise, this is literally how you do it. It's not that hard. The hardest part is getting out of your own way. That is the hardest part. It's one of the reasons why when you look back on your success, you realize that you made it harder than it should have been. You were basically all over the place. Like you're procrastinating, you're doing a lot of things wrong, and you were just all over the place, right? And then when you look back on it, you're like, damn it, all I had to do was 1, 2, 3, and then bam. That's all I had to do, right? And so that's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to kind of walk you through the process of what I did, and then I'm going to show you, if I had to do it over, what I would actually do to sell the online programs for the personal brand, right? So basically, you have to understand that if you're selling an online program, number one, you are selling a lifestyle change, and that is hard as hell for people to do. It's hard for people to change their lives because they're comfortable with where they are. Sure, they have dreams and fantasies of where they want to be, but they're comfortable with where they are, which is why they don't actually do the things to get there. So it's really hard to get people to buy when you don't know how to persuade people the right way. And then it's also hard to get them to change just because, one, they got to be self-motivated to go to your online program. They got to be motivated to actually do the work of your online program, all sorts of stuff. So just understand that if you're going to actually sell an online program for your personal brand, then you want to think along the lines of, how do I make it easy for these people to not only buy, but to actually succeed in the online program? And the first step is you're always thinking about the problem that you want to solve for them. So we're going to start with that, but I'm going to show you how I did it, right? So as most of you know, I started out with restaurant magic. I'm doing like restaurant stuff, and I'm performing, going table to table, performing. And eventually I realized, okay, I'm going to switch to corporate. I'm going to go into the corporate world because they pay more. I'm like, shoot, why charge restaurants $100 a night, get tips and stuff, when I can just go to the corporate world and get thousands of dollars, right? So I switched to the corporate market. And when I switched, I came out with a book for entertainers on how to book restaurants and how to do restaurant magic, just how to make money in restaurants. I showed them how to contact the GMs, how to approach them, like what to say, how to actually get hired by the restaurant, and then how to get a ton of tips. Oh, I had some crazy ass strategies in terms of how to get tips. It was some cool ass strategies, but I wrote a whole book on how to do it, right? And then I sold it to the online magic community. And then I wrote another book for them as well. But basically, I started out with that, but I didn't really commit to it. I didn't commit to selling online programs until I hit 6 figures a month. That's basically when I started committing to it. The reason why I didn't commit is because I was actually doing what I was teaching. And so I was making too much money doing it, and it didn't make sense for me to spend any time teaching it. It made zero sense. Like, why would I spend any time selling a program, even for $1,000, $2,000, when I'm getting gigs for $10,000? It made zero sense. And so I didn't actually commit until it happened, until I made that much. I was like, holy shit. And so that's when I actually committed. And so the first part of actually selling your online program is more of the mental part in terms of the commitment. I know a lot of people think they're committed, but they're really not. And so everyone thinks they're committed to their dreams. Everyone believes they are. But commitment comes when basically family is here, your dreams is like right next to it, or damn near even like, shoot, it may be even at the same level, maybe even a little bit above it, to be honest. Like, that's when you truly are committed. And it's one of those things, like I said, I wasn't committed to selling online until I actually hit the 6-figure a month mark, just because I was doing what I actually taught. And so without commitment, everything that you're going to do is going to go slow. Like all your results are going to happen really, really slow because life is going to get in the way. So you're going to end up thinking, all right, I got to build my website. And I told several people this, like people told me, hey, I want to like sell online programs and stuff. I say, okay, well, first thing, do you have a website? Like, I mean, just a regular website, just a regular brochure type website where people can just go check you out and just see that you have a website. You're like, well, no, not yet. Say, all right, we'll get that up first. I talked to them about 2-3 weeks later. Where's your website? I don't really have it. And so the reason why they don't have it is because life got in the way. Everything else inside their life was a bigger commitment to them. It was more of a priority to them than their dream. And so if you don't make that commitment first, then everything else that I'm going to tell you is basically pointless. And so you have to understand that it all starts with the commitment in terms of anything that you're actually doing. So just understand that part. So like I said, I wasn't committed. So in the beginning, everything happened really, really slow. Just even with the entertainers and everything, just happened really slow. I started with a problem. So I didn't start with speaker training. I started with entertainers. I started in the market of entertainers because I was doing restaurant magic. I'm like, hey, let me sell this stuff to entertainers. So I started selling it to entertainers. I created a blog just for magicians. I'm selling stuff to magicians. What I didn't realize that it was a bad market to begin with. And the reason it was a bad market is because magicians are broke as all hell. Like hands down, they're broke. And so it was broke. And then it was also a small market. So within the magic community, there's a magic community of people who sell tricks in terms of like, here's how you perform a trick. And then there's like subsections in terms of here's how you get gigs to be a professional entertainer, to actually get on stages. I was in this small market of here's how you get gigs, and more specifically, here's how you get restaurant gigs, right? I didn't think it was a small market at the time. I'm just like, all right, a lot of people that I talk with, I mean, they're performing. Why not make money from it, right? And so I didn't think I was in a small market at the time. So I was like trying to tell people, here's how you do your marketing and stuff with the entertainment. Here's what I'm doing. Here's how I'm getting restaurants. Here's how I'm getting some corporate gigs and all that through the restaurants. And I didn't realize it was a bad market. If you start in a bad market, you're screwed. There's nothing you do will make up for a bad market. And this is why, like, when I talk with a lot of speakers and speakers tell me like, oh, I'm in a market, or I speak about, diversity for women in the technology space or something like that. I say to them, like, that's a bad market. It's such a small market that you won't make any money from it. What you want to do is you want to look at the top people in the market and you want to see how much money are they making. So this is like, all right, so my brother, he is a fitness trainer, and he competed in the Mr. Olympia. He was like competing in all these like fitness competitions, right? And so I told him, I was like, look at the number one guy in Mr. Olympia. At the time, it was Phil Heath. Now it's somebody else or whatever. I was like, look at the number one guy in all these fitness competitions, right? How much is he making? Like he wins a couple million, right? If the number one guy is making only a couple million, that is a horrible, horrible market. There's no money there. And so on the other hand, let's say you choose the technology market. The number one guy is freaking Amazon at this point, Jeff Bezos, multi-billions, right? And so that's how you want to start with the market. When people think along the lines of niche, what happens is they think small. Niche doesn't mean small. Niche just means specific. That's what niche means. So when you choose a niche market, you're not choosing a small market, you're choosing a specific market. So like, let's say speaker training is a perfect example, right? So speaker training, public speaking is a big market. Within public speaking, within speaker training, there's public speaking. There's here's how you get keynote gigs. Here's how you sell from the stage. Here's how you build your expert brand as a speaker. So there's several niches within the speaker training market. And that's how you initially need to think. That's what I didn't do in the beginning. I just picked a small market to start with. So I was basically screwed from the get-go. And like I said, I didn't have the commitment in the beginning because I was making too much money actually doing it. So I didn't really think about it at all. Eventually what happened was I realized, okay, this is a horrible market. I'm going to get out of this market. And I knew that because I went from doing entertainment to speaking, I knew the process was the exact same to get hired. The marketing is literally the exact same. There's nothing different other than what you are, other than saying I'm an entertainer versus I'm a speaker. That's literally the only difference. And so because I knew that was the only difference, I was just marketing the same way, getting more speaking gigs. And then I said, you know what, let me just switch over to speaker training. So I switched over to speaker training with the online program, right? And so I was doing the same things, but once again, I wasn't committed because I was making too much money actually doing it instead of teaching it. And so what happened is I realized it was a great market once I switched. And when I committed, when I switched markets, what happened was I knew I was going to get out of the entertainer market. And when I got out of the market, I taught my entire show to entertainers. So I'm getting booked for 10 grand, 15 grand for these corporations and stuff. And I basically said, all right, guys, here's my entire show. You can literally just duplicate my show. That was the moment I knew I was out of the magic market. I was like, this market's horrible. I'm getting out of this market. And I taught my entire show. I created a product for entertainers or for mentalists. I said, here's my entire show from A to Z. Here's what I do. Here are the tricks. Here's how you do it and all that stuff. I taught the whole thing, right? And the reason I taught is because I knew that, hey, if people actually duplicate the thing, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to be doing the show anymore. So they can take my show if they want. So I knew that was a moment. That was a moment I committed to actually getting out of the market. But I still, once again, I didn't commit to actually doing the speaker training all that much. I just started putting stuff out there. And I was just like, all right, let me type a couple articles or whatever. And so that's what I was doing in the beginning. I started the website. So you're obviously one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to start the website. And I started the website. I thought in terms of a niche problem. Remember, it's all about the niche. Niche equals specifics. So I thought, all right, speaker training, I can go into public speaking. I can teach like public speaking stuff. I can't teach how to sell from a stage because at the time I didn't know anything about it. I saw these guys. I was like, holy shiznit, that's amazing. Like, dude freaking made $500,000 in 60 minutes. Holy shiznit, right? So I was impressed by it, but I didn't know it. So I didn't want to teach it. And so I knew that I was really good at actually getting on stages, especially in the corporate market. And so that's what I started teaching. Now, obviously, you build the website first. At that moment, I wrote a book. All right. And so I wrote a book in terms of the speaker training. Here's how you actually get on a stage. And I wrote a book because I needed something to sell. I knew I needed something to sell, right? So in the beginning, I didn't have a program. And a lot of times when you're starting, you really don't have a program in the beginning, but you do want to create something you can sell. You don't have a business until you sell something. This is why when I hear people, Gary Vaynerchuk, when I hear people say create content, don't sell, I'm like, that's bullshit. Like the purpose of your business is to sell something, right? And so that's why, like in the beginning, you create something that you need to sell. And so that's why I wrote the book in the beginning. Initially, I did create content. I did exactly what everybody else did. You hear it from everyone. Like all these gurus, like create content. You see everybody creating content. You hear about podcasts, YouTube, all this stuff. So you're like, well, let me create content. So that's what I did. That was the bad first move because it consumes too much time, and the content process literally just took up too much time. Like I'm sitting there wondering with the green screen. I started with a green screen and like, oh, I got to get the lighting set up just right with a green screen. You got to have make sure there's no shadows and stuff, and so it took too long to actually do this stuff, right? And because I was focusing on the content, I wasn't focusing on how to sell. Like I wasn't focused on here's a product I'm selling and let me just sell the crap out of it. I wasn't focusing on that. And so it was just taking up too much time. And so this is why I tell people you don't start with the content. You start with a product and then you figure out how do I sell the product and you start selling it. Once you start selling it, then you do the content because the content amplifies your sales process. But you don't start with the content. Unfortunately, I started with the content just like everybody else, right? So once again, remember success. You want success to go from A to Z in a straight line. But the way it really happens, especially if you don't like invest in a program or get a mentor, the way it really happens is you're just like all over the place. You're like here. You're just all over the place. So I was all over the place in the beginning. I'm just putting out stuff. Didn't really know what I was doing. That was it, right? And so I then created the program. Now it's called the SpeakPro Academy. Before before, I can't remember what it was called, but before I called it something else, right? But I created a program. It was only 12 videos. That's it. 12 videos. It was cheap as hell in the beginning. It was like $1.99 in the beginning. Then I popped it up to $4.99. Then one day I just said, you know what? Forget this thing. $2,000, 1997. It was still just 12 videos. That's it. 12 videos for $2,000, right? To be honest, I'm kind of ashamed that I was selling the 12 videos for $2,000, even though if they actually did what I taught in the videos, still they get the results. But compared to what it is now people pay $2,000 a year, $5,000 lifetime. Now, people get damn near overwhelmed by the amount of information in there. Like in fact, I don't think there's anybody who hasn't been overwhelmed by the amount of content that's in there, the amount of training that's in there. But in the beginning, all I did is I said, I need something to sell. I created 12 videos, right? So once again, you're thinking, all right, I need something to sell. You create some videos, you create your process, and you think along the lines of, once again, what's that specific problem that they need to have solved? And you only create the videos that solve that problem. That's really, really hard to do. And the reason it's really, really hard to do is because when you're actually trying to teach something, you're trying to think of everything. You're like, all right, let me think of everything I can give them, especially if they're paying $2,000 for this course. I got to give them all the stuff that's really worth $2,000, right? And what happens is you overcompensate by putting in too much, and then they don't get the result because they don't know what to do, right? And so what you have to do, you start with a specific problem. You say, okay, here's how you sell an online program, and here are the 7 steps that you have to take to sell an online program. And that's what you're doing, like in reality, right? And so in the beginning, I just had 12 videos. I'm selling it for $2,000, and so and then after I created the program, I used, I don't know like what WordPress theme I used, but in the beginning, I knew that I didn't want to pay a monthly fee to a website to host my videos and everything, like Kajabi. So there's a website called Kajabi where you can, let's say you create 12 videos for your online program, you host on Kajabi, they build the layout, like it's already pre-built layout for you and everything like that. And then you pay them, I think they're actually expensive, a couple $100 a month or something like that, but you pay them every month. And I thought to myself, why would I do that? Why do I need to pay them every month when I can just get a brand new website and just pay hosting for the website and I don't have to pay anyone monthly, right? So that's what I did. I was like, I don't want that stuff. So that's what I did with the programs. After I actually built that, I now start to build out the opt-in page. So I built out the opt-in page, the lead magnet, and I thought to myself, okay, with the lead magnet, you're thinking along the lines of what can I give away for free where people enter their name and email to get this lead magnet? And it has to be something they actually want. Otherwise, it's just going to cost you a lot of money when you spend money on ads, right? So I thought to myself, well, all right, so I'm a speaker. What would I want? Like if I were to see an ad, what would I actually want? What would make me click on that ad and then say, all right, hell yeah, let me give this dude my name and email to get this thing. So I thought about that and I was like, well, what I would want is I would actually want a list of events that can hire me. I mean, ultimately, I would want literally a name and phone number of someone that can actually hire me. But the next best thing would just be a list of events that I can personally contact to actually hire me to get on a stage. And so I figured, hell, I already have it. And the reason I already had it is because I had my CRM set up. I already had a boatload of events inside the CRM. So I just said, let me just take 100 of these events. Let me just export it into an Excel spreadsheet. And then let me just give that away to people. And so that's what I did. And I got lucky with my lead magnet because I understood the audience so well that I didn't have to go searching for what my audience truly wanted because I knew that I wanted this thing. I knew I wanted freaking leads for events. I kept thinking like, how do I get more events to hire me? How do I find events and all that? I knew that that's what I wanted. I knew that's what other speakers wanted. So that was damn near the first lead magnet that I created and is hands down the best lead magnet I've ever created. And so I started out with that. It was really simple. I didn't spend money on ads yet. Right? So I wasn't confident enough to spend money on ads. And once again, this process at this point, in terms of building the opt-in, creating the 12 videos and everything, if I had to redo that, I could do it within a week. I mean, if that, I mean, I could honestly do it in a couple days probably. The The reason it took so long, that took several months just to do that, just create 12 videos and create the opt-in page. The reason it took so long is, once again, I wasn't at that commitment level in terms of, let me truly go all in on this, just because I was making too much money actually doing it. Like, I was literally just making way too much actually doing it. So I wasn't committed yet. So it was taking me a long time to actually get this stuff set up. After I built an opt-in, the opt-in page, the lead magnet, I had the 12 videos, and I finally got all that set up. Then I started to create an autoresponder sequence. So at this point, I was using Aweber at this point. I thought along the lines of, all right, I'm actually getting gigs. Like, I'm getting gigs and stuff over here. I got this online stuff, and all right, let me just do some online stuff. I don't really want to send out emails, like a lot of emails. I wasn't thinking daily at this point. I was thinking like emails every week or every other week or something like that. I was like, I don't really want to spend time doing that. So let me just create a boatload of emails and put them into an autoresponder sequence. And then I can sit back and money's just going to roll in, right? That's what I thought. That was the fantasy in my head. I was like, all right, let me just create an autoresponder sequence, because all these people, these online people, they say, you have an autoresponder sequence, and then people just buy, right? And so I thought about that. It's like, all right, I created at least 14 emails in an autoresponder sequence, and I'm pretty sure it was about maybe even 20 or so. But I created a lot of emails in the autoresponder sequence. That way I didn't have to like keep sending broadcast emails out, right? So I did that to begin with. If I had to go back, I wouldn't create that many, but basically that's what I did in the beginning, because inside of my head I was thinking along the lines of, I don't really want to do a ton of work on this thing. There's no reason to at this point. So that's what I was thinking at that point. Once I created the autoresponder sequence, I had the sales process set up. So I had the program, I had the sales process set up. I now started getting more invested in the content. I now started thinking along the lines of, how do I make better videos, and how do I create better articles and stuff. At the time I was writing articles, right? So I was thinking along the lines of the content, but I was also thinking along the lines of, what content do I create? I didn't know what to actually create. And so this is what happens when you're actually doing the online program. You're thinking along the lines of, what content do I create? And if you're in, like, even the speaker training market, getting gigs and stuff, that is actually a really, really niched market as well. So it's also kind of small, to be honest. So when I would go online, I'd type in like, all right, how to get gigs, and I would look to see like what are other people talking about. That way I can talk about something that they're talking about or whatever. I would go to Quora, I'd look on Facebook, like Facebook groups, see what people are talking about and everything. And that's what I was thinking in terms of content creation. I was like, what questions are people asking? Let me just answer them in a video. Now, at the time, I realized, because I was actually doing it, right? I realized that the people who were asking questions, they were so new to the process that the questions were useless. It was questions that wouldn't actually help them in any way. So even if I answered the question, it was literally pointless. When you don't know enough about a topic, you don't even know what questions to ask on that topic. And so that's what happened with when I was actually looking at all the questions people were asking. I'm like, all right, this is a dumbass question. What the hell? Why is he asking that? And so I knew that if I were to answer those questions, it would be good for SEO, right? So like, if I go into the public speaking market and I'm teaching presentation skills, one of the first videos I come out with is like how to overcome the fear of public speaking or something like that, right? Because that's one of the number one things that people ask. But it's also a very useless question, how to overcome the fear, because the answer is simple. You just keep doing it. That's literally the only answer to overcome public speaking. But people don't know what questions to ask. And so I noticed that when it came to the speaker training, and I thought to myself, I can focus on creating content that'll help me with SEO in terms of, if they type in overcoming public speaking skills or overcoming fear of public speaking, then I'll pop up as number one. I can focus on that, or I can focus on the information that they actually need to know. That's what I started to do. I was like, you know what? I'm going to focus on the information that they actually need to know. I don't care about SEO, because I knew in the back of my head, I knew if I spent money on advertising that people would naturally see all the content. They'd be like, he's the greatest in the world. And so I knew that's what would happen, right? So I ignored the questions that people were asking, and I thought to myself, what questions should you be asking? And that's the content that I started to create. And so at this point, I started to really think about the list, but once again, I wasn't really thinking too much about spending money on ads, because I I was afraid I was going to lose the money. And even though I was making a ton of money actually doing it, I always think along the lines of, I want a business to generate its own revenue. I don't want to have to take money from this business and put it into this business. I didn't want to do that. And so that's why I still didn't spend money on advertising it. I had all the stuff set up. I'm producing content. I'm like, all right, people eventually see me or whatever. I'm producing content, but still nothing really happened at this point. And while all of this is going on, I start to add more information to the online program. So I'm like, okay, oh yeah, they also need to know this. And I started adding more information to the online program. I'm like, okay, oh yeah, they need some email templates like this. Oh, they need this resource. And so I started adding more stuff as time went on. Eventually, I say, you know what, Benji, stop being dumb. Start spending money on building your list, right? Because I kept hearing it from all these gurus, build your list, build your list, build your list, right? So once again, I was afraid to spend money on the ads. So I only spent like $5. I spent like $5 a day, if that. I think in the beginning, maybe it was like maybe $200 for lifetime. And I just let that kind of run out. And so, luckily some people signed up, and then when someone bought my book, right? So it was like they signed up and then I offered a book immediately, a $7 ebook. When someone bought the book, I was like, oh my goodness, this works. Right? I think I got more excited by selling a $7 ebook than selling a $15,000 speech. Like literally, I was like, holy shiznit. Someone actually bought, they don't even know who I am. They just, what? Like it blew my mind, right? And so that's when I really started to actually like kind of pay attention to it in terms of like, wow, there's actually something going on with this thing, right? And so after I did that, I started adding a little bit more money into the ads, like not even more than $10 a day. I started adding just a little bit more. At first I was using PayPal, by the way. So everything that I was using in terms of selling stuff, I went cheap. I was like, okay, let me not get a shopping cart. None of this. I didn't get any of that. I was like, all right, well, the shopping cart was PayPal because it was free. So in the beginning, I'm thinking in terms of how do I not pay monthly to host my online program? How do I not pay monthly for a shopping cart? All the stuff that I was using, it was all free stuff, right? Even with hosting the videos, hosting the training, I initially put it on YouTube. Eventually, I did actually pay for Vimeo because Vimeo was only like, I think $55 a month or something for their thing. You can hide it, whereas on YouTube you can't actually like hide it. People can still send the link to everyone else. So I did actually pay for that in the beginning. But basically, so that's what happened in the beginning. When someone bought, and when I kind of saw, I was like, oh wow, this stuff can actually work. My goodness. And when that happened, I actually invested in training. So I actually bought someone else's program. And at this point, I redesigned the funnel. I invested in a training. It wasn't expensive. It was only like, I don't think it was even more than $50. I think it was maybe $30 or something like that. I just invested in a simple training. And then I redesigned the funnel, and I was looking at what all these other guys were doing, more specifically people who were doing at least 7 figures a month, right? So I'm looking at what these other guys were doing, and I'm thinking like, okay, here's their funnel. Here's how they set up the process. And then I'm thinking, okay, these guys send out emails daily on a daily freaking basis. And at the time I thought, that's too many. Sending out emails every single day, that's way too many. But then I said, you know what, Benji? They're freaking doing 8 figures a year in their business, and I'm not. So I was like, you know what? Email every single day. And so I started to eventually email every single day. And what I did with that whole process is I didn't actually email, like I didn't sit down every day and email. I sat down for one day, and I would just create like 30 emails. I'd literally create a month's worth of emails because you got to remember at the time I'm also traveling to these events. I'm like actually getting booked. Once again, I still didn't actually fully commit to the process. So I'm traveling, and when you travel, you're on an airplane, you're in a hotel room or whatever. You got all this time, right? So I was in an airplane or something, and I'm just on my laptop just typing out these emails, like typing out 30 emails, and bam, scheduling all the emails to send out on a daily basis, right? So I set everything up. I worked for one day, a few hours in one day, and I had everything set for the entire month, right? So that's what I was doing in the beginning. And then eventually, like, it kind of hit me. I said, all right, Benji, start spending more money on advertising. So I started spending more money on advertising, and then I kept tweaking the sales page. I kept tweaking everything because I had the foundation at this point. I had the online program. I had the opt-in page. I had the thank you page selling the ebook. I had all this stuff, right? I had the emails that would say, go buy the program. I had all this set up, but nothing was really optimized. And so at this point, you're thinking along the lines of how do I optimize everything? So I was thinking along the lines of, can I get a better lead magnet? I was trying different lead magnets, but nothing was better than the lead magnet I first created. So I was like, okay, forget that. Let me just, all right, I got a great lead magnet. Then I started thinking in terms of how do I write better emails? And I started thinking in terms of how do I create a better sales page, the actual sales copy on the sales page? How do I create better content? So I started optimizing the process at this point. I was trying out different things, right? I was trying out webinars. I was trying out sending the emails. I was trying out just sales videos, product launches. I was trying out all these different things. I never could get product launches to work. Like no matter what I did with product launch, I just couldn't get it to work no matter what. And so, I was trying different methods of actually converting. Eventually I realized, all right, Benji, you got to step it up a little bit, man, step it up. And so, at this point I started to actually buy stuff. Like I went from PayPal and I bought a Sam cart. This was a shopping cart. And now I could start doing upsells and downsells and all this stuff and started getting, better. And I wish I would have invested in a shopping cart like Sam cart to begin with, like earlier, because when I invested in Samcart, and I can include upsells and downsells, when that happened, my profits just increased like instantly, because instead of just selling a $7 book and I only get $7 for that day, I would sell a $1.99 product that I also created, and then bam, I'd have a little bit over $200, right? And so I wish I would have done that earlier, but I didn't at the time, right? And so that's what I did. I create the shopping cart, or I bought the shopping cart. I increased the emails on a daily basis, started sending every single day. I spent more money on advertising at this point because I was making more money with the upsells and downsells. I was making more money with that. So I said, okay, this is actually making some money. So let me start putting it back in. Almost every dollar that I made, I reinvested it back into the business, because once again, I was making a lot of money, making way too much money freaking doing the thing instead of teaching the thing. So I didn't need that money to pay for anything. I didn't need that money to pay my rent. I didn't need that money for anything. All I needed that money for was to grow the business. So when I spent $1 and I made $2, I put $2 back into the business. And that's what I started doing. And then it was just increasing. Before I knew it, I was like, damn, $93,000 in a month. Holy shiznit, right? And that's when I was like, all right, man, maybe I should put a little more time into this thing. And so that's kind of what happened with the whole process. I think actually doing the thing, like me actually getting myself booked on stages, is what allowed me to get more focused on producing revenue in the online program. When people are trying to build an authority-based business, they're trying to sell their expertise, what they do is they create content and they're trying to build followers. Building followers is the most wasteful use of your time imaginable. Like hands down the most wasteful use of your time ever. Followers does not correlate. It doesn't correlate to revenue. Like literally, there's zero correlation whatsoever. Of course, you'll see people who have 50,000 followers and they have a big business or whatever, or 100,000 followers. But then you'll see people who have 200,000 followers and they're working at Starbucks. There is zero correlation between the two. And I didn't really think about that at the time. I think the only reason I focused on revenue at the time is because me actually performing and actually speaking on stages, I just said to myself, what are the things that I need to focus on? And I knew all I really need to focus on is actually generating revenue. And so those are the only activities I engaged in. I didn't care about how many Facebook followers I had or Facebook fans I had at the time. I don't think Instagram was that popular, if it was even around. I didn't really focus on Instagram at the time. I didn't focus on Twitter, none of that stuff. I was like, all right, I'll just type whenever I feel like typing, or posting whenever I feel like posting, or whatever. That's all I was doing with social media at the time. And so I just focused on revenue, and that's what a lot of people don't do for some reason. A lot of people, they want to build followers, which is literally the most useless thing you could ever do when you're selling an online program. You just want the followers to come naturally. I've got friends out here who have 3,000, 5,000 followers doing 7 figures a month. And then I got other friends out here who have 80,000 followers who literally, they're struggling. Like they're not selling online programs. They actually work at a job, but they got 80,000 followers because they're a good looking female, and then they just post stuff and bam, they just get followers, right? So I understood that from the very get-go. Then what happened eventually, like now we're in the process of actually not doing, we're still doing the speaker training, but now it's more of doing the online programs for all these companies and stuff. So that's where a lot of the money is actually being made at this point. And so if I were to go back, so in the beginning I was like all over the place, right? If I were to go back, I would actually simplify the entire process. I'd make it like insanely simple. And I think in terms of the activities that you need to engage in are really simple. So the activities are this. It's like you're focusing on the offers, you're focusing on ads, you're focusing on content. Well, later on you focus on content. You focus on emails, sales videos, funnel creation, and programs, right? So that's kind of all you're really doing to sell your expertise. And with all that I listed, content is, like I said, it's the last thing you need to do, if at all. You literally do not need to create content to sell online programs. Like, you literally don't. And so it's just one of those things that amplifies what you're doing, right? So those are the actual activities that I would only focus on. I want to point out that I failed the entire way in terms of building, selling online programs. I failed the entire way. I think the only reason it didn't affect me is because I failed so much actually trying to get gigs that failing in the online world was like I don't know, it was just useless to me. Like it didn't matter. It was like I'm fighting a giant over here, and then failure over here is just like a little baby. It's like, so what? Webinars didn't work. So what? Product launch didn't work. So what? I just made 15 grand off of a gig, right? So it didn't matter to me that I failed. My webinars didn't work. My emails didn't convert. My sales pages sucked. Let's see, my lead magnets, my Facebook ad account got shut down. Oh, that was actually kind of scary. I was like, motherfucker. Like, I was actually pissed at Facebook when that happened. I was unsure of what market to target. And so I just failed a lot. And I think the only reason it didn't faze me is just because I failed more actually speaking and being an entertainer in terms of, all right, so I'm going like restaurant to restaurant. All these general managers are turning me down. I'm freaking 15 years old, getting turned down by damn near every restaurant in Colorado Springs. And so it hardened me. I grew a thick skin to begin with, right? And so when I failed with the online stuff, it like literally when people tell me, when people ask me things like what are some lessons you learned from failure, or like what are some failures you had, a lot of times I can't remember the failures. The reason it's not because I didn't fail, it's just because when I do, it doesn't register in my brain. It's almost like literally you wake up today, or let's say like, what did you wear 2 weeks ago on Monday? What did you wear 2 weeks ago on Monday? Like, what did you actually wear? It's not that important for you to remember, so you don't actually remember it. You're like, I don't know what I wore. Freaking, what is today? December. So it's like, let's say December 1st. Like, what'd you wear December 1st? Like, what socks did you have on? You're like, I don't know. It's not that important, right? So that's what happened to me with failure. Like, I failed so often that it doesn't register in my brain when I fail at anything anymore. And so that's kind of what happened is I failed my entire way. If I were to do it over, literally the process is insanely simple. I think the reason why it takes people so long to accomplish anything is because we make it complicated without realizing it. This is why I keep telling people like, hey man, if you haven't joined a program, if you don't have a mentor, it's going to take you so long because you're going to be doing the wrong things. You're going to be doing the right things the wrong way. It's going to take you too long. You're all over the place. Your mind is all over the place. You're procrastinating. All this stuff is just all over the place. And so if I were to start over, here's literally what I would do. I would first create a product because you need something to sell. I would ignore Gary Vaynerchuk. I would ignore them about just not selling stuff to begin with. I would instantly create a product because a business sells. And so I would start by creating a product. Then I would create one sales process. This is one of the mistakes that I made when I was trying to sell the online program. You see all this information about how to sell online programs or how to build your expert business, your authority business or whatever, right? You see all this stuff. You see webinars, sales videos and this autoresponder sequence and product launches. You see all these different ways to sell a product. All of them work. Every single one of them work. Webinars, sales videos, emails, product launches, they all work. What you have to do is you pick one of them. And that's what I would do. I would say, okay, I'm going to only sell through emails by sending out emails. That's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to create a single webinar, not going to do any product launches. I'm only going to sell through sending emails. And the reason you do that is because you have to master the process. So if you choose emails, you have to master copywriting. You become a master copywriter in terms of here's how you paste and lead them to buy and all that sort of stuff. If you're doing webinars, you're like, all right, I'm going to do webinars. That's the only thing I'm going to focus on in terms of selling. You say, okay, I'm going to get really, really good at creating one webinar that's going to make me $1 million. I'm only going to rework this one webinar until I hit $1 million, right? And so that's what you do, because if you do what I did, what happened is you'll do webinars, sales videos, emails, product launches. You won't get good at any one of them. You'll just keep failing at all of them. Like you just won't get good at any one of them because you're not putting in enough time to get good at any one of them. So I would create the product. I would create one sales process in terms of here's how I'm going to sell this product. Just one sales process. Then I would focus on building the list. 99% of my mindset would be focused on building the list. I would spend money on advertising. It's really simple. If you are not spending money in your business, you will not make money. It's really that simple. You will not make money until you start spending money. Right now, you are afraid to spend money. Just as I was afraid, I think everyone's afraid in the beginning to spend money. You don't want to lose the money. And you have to understand a couple things. One, you're going to lose money no matter what. No matter how good you get, you're still going to lose money. You can make 8 figures a day and you will still lose money on spending it on advertising. There's no doubt about that. There's no such thing as you spending money and everything works out for you. There's no such thing. So when you get that through your head, you're like, okay, so I'm always going to lose money. Let me just hurry up and figure this thing out then. And so in the beginning, I would focus on creating a product, creating one sales process, and then I start building the list by spending money in terms of the lead magnet and all that, spending money on ads, whether it's Google ads, Facebook ads, whatever ad platform makes sense. That's what I would start doing. At that point, I would really focus on the conversion in terms of like, all right, here's how I'm going to convert. Is it the webinar? Is it the email? So I'm going to really focus on getting good at that conversion process. Once it works, right? I'm not going to spend a lot of money in the beginning on ads. Maybe I'll spend $10 a day at first, maybe $20 a day at first. I'm not going to spend a lot of money at first. But once it works, I'm going to put all that money back into the business. Like all right, bam, I made a sale, bam, put it all back into spend more money on ads. And I'm going to keep repeating the process, keep throwing it back in, just throwing the money back in. And then finally, I'm going to start creating content. At the end, I'm going to create content, whether it's social media, the videos, podcasts, or whatever. Finally, I'll start creating content because content amplifies what you're doing. So when you become the brand, the expert, when you have this brand, the sales come easier because people know who you are and all that stuff. So it's just easier for you to actually generate the sales. But in the beginning, you got to make sure your sales process works. And so that's what I would do in the beginning. I make sure it works. Then I start creating the content. That's literally the entire thing that I would do. You got to understand something that nobody stays in your funnel forever. This is why you have to sell immediately. This is why Gary Vaynerchuk, the advice that he gives in terms of not selling is stupid. Like hands down, it is dumb. You sell immediately because if you don't sell, you won't generate any revenue and you're going to end up giving up because you're thinking like, oh, none of this is working. I'm not making any money. Like, oh, I got to go get a job, right? You sell immediately. Nobody stays in your funnel. Like nobody just stays from the very get-go. They opt in and then they're not going through your 30 autoresponder emails. They'll watch one video and then come back and watch another video 10 days later and then come back and then they're gone, right? And so you got to understand this. So that's why you sell immediately. They opt in, bam, sell them something. And that's literally what you're doing. You sell them something instantly. And so then you're producing content so you can get the sale later on. Like several people watching this, you guys have been watching me for a year, 2 years, or however long, right? And several people have watched me for a year, and then they finally buy because there's some moment that triggers it, right? And so that's what content does, is people will watch you for a year, 2 years, and then they'll finally buy. Of course, because it took them so long, maybe the product's more expensive or whatever, right? But still, that's what content does. And so understand that you got to sell immediately, but that's literally the entire process in terms of how to sell the online programs. It's not that hard. The hardest part is getting out of your own way. That is literally the hardest part, is just getting out of your own way. All right. So let's see if there was any questions. So let's see. Said, you've been at this since 1997. I don't know when I've been at this since. Let's see. All right, cool. Preach it. Preach on. All right, so let's see. Said, can you explain the difference in creating content and the daily live videos? Do you consider live videos content? I do mostly live videos. Yeah, I mean, live videos, it's content. It's just a matter of there's no reason to create content until you have something to sell. There's literally no reason to create content unless you have something to sell. So it's not that I'm saying don't create content. I'm saying don't create it until you have something to sell. So that's what I'm saying. All right. Because otherwise it's like literally what will happen is you're just creating content for no reason, and then you're not going to get any sales. Like you're not going to make any money from it. And then you're just going to think like, well, what the hell? And then you'll naturally get demotivated and give up. Hands down, it will happen. And so that's one of the reasons why there's no reason to create content without something to sell. All right, so let's see. He said every failure is one step closer to success. Cool. See, he said you're immune to criticism. I'm so sensitive. I remember failures from 10 years ago. Yeah, I think what happens with criticism and all that is the more you fail, the more you get desensitized to it. It's one of the reasons why when people say, how do I overcome the fear of public speaking? The only answer to it, literally the only answer to that question is you just speak. You do it. You become desensitized to it. You get in front of an audience, you get in front of people, and you talk. In the beginning, you're going to be sweating bullets. You're going to be like, oh, shoot. Damn. You may even faint. Probably, you may faint. People will laugh at you. They'll record you, put you on YouTube and Facebook Live and everything. And hey, I'll probably laugh at you too. But the thing is, the only way to overcome it is to be desensitized by it. And so that's why I think the only reason is because when I was young, when I'm going to restaurants, and I damn near went to every restaurant in Colorado Springs to try to get hired. And from their perspective, as a general manager, and they see this kid, this 15-year-old kid, and he's like, hey, so I'd love to come perform at your restaurant and all this stuff. And so they naturally said no. And I'm going to every single restaurant. I'm like, I was actually pissed. And so it just got to a point where I became desensitized. And then when I started doing prospecting, I'm doing cold email and cold calling. What happened with that is, once again, I'm getting so many no's. People ignore me and all that. And in the beginning, it's like, it hurts in the beginning. You're like, dang it, what the hell? Man, but eventually you just get desensitized to it. And so that's what happens. And you want to get to a point where you literally do not care about what people think about you. And so that's a whole other video we'll talk about. But basically that's kind of what happens in terms of failure. You just fail so many times. You don't even think about it. You're just like, all right, oh, well, kind of expected it. And so that's literally what happens. So let's see. Clarence following since 2011. Nice. Helped me a ton. Also had a question in the group about a gig. All right, yeah, Clarence, I'll go into the group and I'll answer questions later on. All right, any other final questions before we are done for today? But that's literally the entire process. Understand that the reason why you're not where you want to be is because you're in your own way without realizing it. There are things that you're doing that's just flat out wrong. There are things that you're doing that are right, but you're doing it the wrong way. There's all sorts of things that you are just in your own way. You're not as disciplined as you need to be. There's all sorts of stuff that's just getting in your own way. And then also there's that whole shiny object syndrome, right? Where you just see someone say, here's what you need to do. And then you see another person say, here's what you need to do. And another person hey, do webinars. Hey, do sales videos. Hey, do more social media. Hey, do cold calling. Hey, do cold email, right? And the problem is all of it works, but because it's the shiny object syndrome, you're just like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And you don't do anything long enough to get it to work. And so that's what happens when you're actually building your business, right? So let's see. You said there is no success that has ever happened without failure. All right, cool. Let's see. All right, if you don't fail. All right, yep, exactly. All right. So I guess we are good to go for today. Oh, actually, we will not be doing a Facebook Live tomorrow because I got a workshop thing tomorrow. So I was trying to see if I could fit it in, but probably won't because I got to head out like instantly. So we won't be doing a thing tomorrow. We'll start Monday, 9 a.m. Pacific time for another Facebook Live. If there's any other final questions, I'll wait a few seconds. I know there's a delay in here. Let's see if there was anything else I wanted to talk about. That's literally the entire process in terms of the selling online. That's literally the entire process. Like I said, with success, people they're all over the place. And eventually you realize, you're like, all right, you're all over the place. Eventually you get there, you get there 10 years. Eventually you're like, damn it, I could have done this in 1 year, if that. I could have done it in 1 year. The problem is I just didn't go in a straight line because you're hearing all this advice about what you should do and all this stuff. And almost all the advice is right to some degree. But the problem is, once again, you're starting and stopping, you're going all over the place. So you're not doing anything long enough to make it work. See, you said, is your workshop in Ohio? No, it's out here in Vegas. So the workshops that I do, they're workshops for events, for companies. So it's not that I'm putting on the workshop where I'm bringing in people. It's these companies like insurance companies, real estate companies, and all these companies where they have their own people. I just come in and train them in marketing. So those are the workshops. They're basically paying me like 30 grand and up for these workshops, right? So if I do a workshop, I'll let you guys know. All right. Cool. So I guess we are good to go. So I will see you guys on Monday, 9 a.m. Pacific time. So take care, everybody. Adios.